If you lose confidence in the currency, the banks, then you lose confidence in fiat currency as money. And therefore the money is dying. It's obviously dying in Venezuela. It's obviously dying in Argentina. But it's dying everywhere in the world, even in the United States and in Western Europe. When you lose confidence in the money, then you start thinking about commodity monies. I think decentralization, security, privacy, and potential for high returns, they're all very reasonable things. So the reason I own Bitcoin is because it's either A, good for the world, it's an ethical imperative, or it's B, essential for the world. So it's ethical and it's an imperative. If you want to give freedom and property rights and hope to 8 billion people, you're not going to do it by day trading random stocks or investing in the corner delicatessen or trading options, right? If you're just a simple investor, that's not going to actually make the world a better place for 8 billion people. So Bitcoin is much more ethical than 100,000 other investment ideas. And I think the ability to give digital property or digital scarcity to 8 billion people on a mobile phone is sort of a once in the history of the human race development. It's a paradigm shift. The reason to invest in Bitcoin is the same reason you ought to support running water or electricity. Or if I said, would you like to teach everybody on the continent how to master fire? Why should I do that? The answer is because life is cold, short, and brutal without fire. You ought to do it because it's the right thing to do if you happen to like humanity or believe in the future of the human race. What we see is an avalanche of banking failures internationally. The extreme examples in Africa, in South America, and Asia, where the banks literally seal their doors, freeze your funds, and don't give them back to you. And I think we see an avalanche of currency failures all around the world. The extreme examples of Venezuela, Argentina, Nigeria, etc., Sri Lanka. But the lesser example is, even in the US, the world's most solid, strongest fiat currency in the world today reports a 4.9% CPI number. That means that the actual monetary inflation in the dollar is more than 5%. It's much more than that. The CPI is the lowest inflation number the government's going to actually endorse, not the highest. Inflation in places like Argentina is 105%. Inflation everywhere in the world, in the world's strongest currency, the monetary inflation must be running 10%. In the weaker currencies, 20 to 30%. In the weakest currencies, 50 to 100%. So we have a crisis of confidence in currencies. We have a crisis of confidence in banks. Everywhere else in the world, if you want to actually access the strong currency, the dollar, you have to do it through a bank. But you can't trust the bank. There's a crisis of currency in the governments that control the banks, and the thought that maybe they're not all being run in a fair, equitable fashion for the people of the world. We could talk about that for a long time, but let's just start with the acknowledgement that the consensus is all of those things are losing support of the population. If you lose confidence in the currency, the banks, then you lose confidence in fiat currency as money. And therefore the money is dying. It's obviously dying in Venezuela. It's obviously dying in Argentina. But it's dying everywhere in the world, even in the United States and in Western Europe. You start thinking about commodity monies. If I can't trust the bank, if I can't move the money cross-border, and if the currency is losing value every year or every month, is it gold? Are we going to trade oil? Are we going to move timber, soybeans? What are your choices? If you want to move $10 million in gold, that's 350 pounds. when it comes time to actually trade $10 million of gold, it's going to cost you $250,000 in insurance and shipping fees to move 350 pounds of gold. If I wanted to move $10 million of oil, that's 125,000 barrels of oil. That's $400,000 to ship the oil from New York to London. Okay, that doesn't make any sense, not to mention the fact the average person doesn't have space for 125,000 barrels of oil. You want to move, property? $10 million of property is an apartment building. How do I move an apartment building from Africa to South America to North America? That's not happening at all. So what about a painting? Okay, well, a painting's pretty efficient, a $10 million painting. The problem is it's physical, it's fragile, it's non-fungible, which means that it might burn, it might get soaked, it might get lost, it might get stolen. But if it doesn't get any of those things and you want to trade it to the rich counterparty in London, you're paying anywhere from $500,000 to $2 million in auction fees just to trade $10 million of money in the form of a painting. What do we have left, right? I mean, securities, you can't move $10 million of stocks across a border because they're trapped by the counterparty. Holding $10 million of an ETF at 50 to 100 basis points a year is going to cost you $500,000 to $1 million to store your money in securities. Now you see, what's $10 million of Bitcoin? 300 Bitcoin. So I can have 300 Bitcoin on a hardware wallet. I could, in theory, just remember it with a 12-word seed phrase. I can move it cross-border anywhere in the world. By the way, compare 300 Bitcoin as money versus a yacht. A $10 million yacht is 125 feet long, costs $2 million a year to maintain, and costs you $200,000 to move from America to Europe in about 4 weeks or 3 weeks. So you can see all the other forms of commodity money. They're not fast, they're expensive to maintain, they're physical, they're fragile, they're non-fungible, the fees are exorbitant. So if the world's struggling for a solution to commodity money, Bitcoin is the king commodity. It's better than every other physical commodity because it's digital. I can carry it in the palm of my hand. Try carrying 125,000 barrels of oil in the palm of your hand. And it's also better than every other commodity because it's scarce. It's a scarcity. If the price of oil goes up by a factor of 10, if the price of gold goes up by a factor of 10, if the price of anything goes up by a factor of 10, people, the collective intelligence of 8 billion people will produce more of it. But Bitcoin is the one thing you can't produce more of. Bitcoin's the apex money because it's scarcity and it's digital. And of course, it's the dominant crypto network in the world. It's the one that everybody trusts. It's the one that's truly decentralized. It's the one that's acknowledged as an asset without an issuer. So I think the meltdown of the banks and the meltdown of currencies is driving a stampede of smart money to Bitcoin. To Bitcoin. To Bitcoin.